Hello and welcome to this month's session of Empower Her Music, an initiative by IPRS in association with Dolby India and ArtistAloud. So sound has long been an integral part of entertainment, be it audio, visual, or just sonic. This has ensured that the entertainment industry in general and the sound artists and the sound technicians in particular have been striving throughout history to create better quality of sound when it comes to production and also when it comes to the audience having a higher, better listening pleasure. So in today's session, which is titled The New Era of Music, one of India's finest sound guy, Mr. KJ Singh, popularly known as Paji, and the senior content services engineer for Dolby Atmos India, Bhaskar Pal, to discuss changes in sound production technologies over the years, how has that evolved, and all that. So first, I'll go to the big man here on my right, Mr. Paji. So now I won't say you have been way too long in the industry. I would just say in the short time that you have spent in the industry, how has your experience been? You've seen technology change from schools to what we are right now in the atmosphere. So how has it evolved?
I can just say I was fortunate that I happened to be interested in audio and sound at a time when, audio technology in the analog world, which is magnetic tape, was just kind of about to reach its zenith. I mean, it already had with 2-inch 24 track and other machines being there, analog consoles being one of the best, outboard rack being one of the best quality ones which were out there, which of course we are emulating now in plugins. So I kind of jumped into audio at that point of time. So I was very fortunate to work with that, hear that sound, and that has become the imprint for me. And I think people from my generation, and I would like to include Bhaskar in that, though he likes to slip out. But for people of our generation who got an opportunity to listen and imprint what that analog sound was all about, which is what everybody's trying to emulate now backwards in today's day and time. So that formed a very important basis for my work later on in the years. And of course, then the advent of digital. So if you
Right.
look at a quick history of sound, it's like, I mean, if I may just point out, the stereo is just like, 1930s, man, and look at where we are now, post stereo, in terms of purely as a format. It was only when we got into a 5.1, if I want to say it, especially for cinema. I'm not talking about audio music right now, but let's say just for cinema. That's the time the format changed. But till that time, we had mono, we had stereo, and for a long time, we had just stereo, left and
Nothing.
right channel,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So that evolution of sound, and of course, in the recording medium, with the phonograph with Mr. Edison, and coming with LPs, coming with I mean, Internet of the 30s is the radio is called the Internet of the 30s.
Hmm.
That was the internet then, radio. First time mass consumption of music and entertainment. Uh, Coming to cassettes, 8 track, and CDs. So formats have changed so much as well. Look at it now. So we were at the cusp of analog, and then we saw the start of digital, right from the bottom to what we call today sterile recording, very low bit rate, CD quality, which everybody thought was too clean and too sterile and, too rigid, didn't have the warmth of the analog. So, and to the rising quality of the digital audio, right now we all are familiar with, we have lived with it, and we are comfortable with it. That's also another important point. So that early war of whether analog is good or digital is good is slowly, I think, being laid to rest.
True.
We are coming to grips with some fantastic quality of sound, and there have been certain companies who've been responsible for pushing that barrier of quality of sound and using technology to kind of bring it to every person, whether in terms of creation of sound. So I call it, there is creation of sound, whether it's music, voice, cinema, or anything. You have audio which is created, then that audio is recorded and processed and edited and mixed, then it is distributed, and lastly it's consumed. So there are these four aspects of audio which are there, and through the years we've seen all four have changed. The
Yeah.
way we make music, the way we record music, the way we distribute music, and the way we listen to music, if I may just call music as such, all has changed. Nothing is what it was, any of those four formats. So that's just to kind of bring you to up to date to now. for people who might not be just familiar with where we've come from. And I think it's always important to just look back over your shoulder in terms of history, where we've come from, just to realize what all we've achieved, because sometimes we lose perspective from that point of view. So great advances ultimately coming into, like I said, 5.1, 7.1, the extensions, THA, everything. And then finally, with Atmos, though I think Dolby can correct me and Bhaskar can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was 2012 or somewhere when,
Yeah,
Brave was there with Pixar,
that's
right?
right.
So, right. So
2012.
we are looking at a 9 year a 9 year old technology which has already been there 9 years, and so they've been pushing it out there in cinema, and now it's in Dolby Music as well. So Atmos is there. So we are in beginning to just take baby steps in terms of coming to understand this format and the advancement in technology to kind of figure out how we are going to again do all those four things. So
Right.
this new format is now, pushing us into all those for how do we go about doing this and finally come to certain standardizations, which they've already set. So that's a benchmark to start with. But for engineers who are creators, us engineers, and then finally listeners, we all have to come to some kind of an agreement and some kind of a, common ground that we all agree, yeah, this is good material. So, yep, so many changes in such a short span of my lifetime I'm seeing, and I'm absolutely blown away, fascinated by it.
You're still quite young, sir. So let us
Of
not
course.
get into that. Yeah. So, Bhaskar, sir, like, would you this like as sir said, we are using this technology. It's been there for the last 9 years already. So, can you give us a brief, like, how and what was Dolby doing all this time, and how did it finally decide to get into even music production when it comes to Atmos?
So it's interesting what Paji was just saying, and to your point, Hardik. Actually, it's very interesting. Many people may not be aware of this, but the whole Dolby technology started with Ray Dolby, the founder of Dolby, actually working on something called noise reduction, and it all started in a music studio. So, very interestingly, the whole development of the initial Dolby technology was totally tied with music and how the music recording quality could be enhanced because people need to understand a little bit of the historical development happening at that point of time. And multi-track magnetic recording was just starting. So the technical people on the session will probably know and be aware of that. When you add multiple tracks of audio together, you have more added noise coming in, and that was something which was a big irritant. Especially for Ray Dolby, who wanted a solution, and that's how he came up with this, unique idea of a noise reduction system, and that's where the entire Dolby's technological journey started, or like was born, rather. And from there, it quickly moved on to Ray Dolby thinking like, okay, so noise reduction is one thing that will enhance the overall experience and the recording quality. But what more can be done? And then the focus shifted on cinema side of things, where the experience was the least, because at home you had high fidelity systems and stuff like that, but which was good. And like Paji was saying, we have all been lucky to have been born and listening to analog audio to start with, and we all realize and we appreciate what is the warmth of analog audio and how that experience was. But all of that was fine at homes with high fidelity systems that probably still existed, at that point of time. This was like mid 60s. You had, disc players. I mean, not the CD, but you had the lacquer disc, the LPs and EPs of that time,
LPs.
and they were at homes you had decent system. But if you went to a cinema, one, you had what we call today as mono sound, monaural sound, and everything was optical. So it was scratchy. It was bad sound. It didn't have fidelity, and so Ray Dolby wanted to improve that experience. So from noise reduction, the journey went on into the cinema side of things, and the whole effort went into enhancing and increasing the quality of audio in the cinema space. And that's how then the next thing that happened was to also move from mono sound to 4-channel Dolby surround sound. So that was the next development that Ray Dolby introduced, and suddenly you had like quadraphonic sound in cinemas. And obviously, sound was still optical at that point of time, although there were like a few releases on magnetic, on for big productions on 70 releases, where people even experimented with 6-track sound and things like that. But basically, it remained like Dolby surround or quadraphonic sound for a long time, and then in the 90s, that's when Dolby came with the Dolby digital sound, because people had already, started appreciating the digital audio fidelity. And like at home, people already had CDs to experience, better quality sound. Again, better is always relative. So some people would associate, cleaner, scratchless, and sound as better audio. But like Paji said, CD quality sound still lacked, a little of the warmth of the analog sound. So, but interestingly, so people again like this is what was interesting in those decades was that people had a better experience at home first, and then they would go to the cinema to experience something equivalent or better. And that's when Dolby brought this 6-channel digital sound to films, and people were wowed. You said, yeah, this is like suddenly the sound became as big as the picture was intended to be. And then as with digital technology, further things happened, and obviously till that point of time, movies were still celluloid. All the movies that you watched were on 35 prints. And then, came in digital cinema, where finally today I think we have almost zero 35 prints. Just very few specific, uh, cases would exist around the world as. So we have digital cinema, and with digital cinema, things changed one more time. So suddenly you had the possibility of having more number of audio channels to be reproduced, which was a limitation on the optical soundtrack. And then Dolby introduced Dolby Digital 7.1 surround sound. So again, this was a great step to kind of match the 3D visuals, and at that point of time, so it's interesting how certain things get tied to each other. So at that point of time, 3D movies were, quite popular, and suddenly, people felt that 5.1 surround was not doing enough justice to the three-dimensional visual experience that you had, and 7.1 Dolby surround kind of tried to bridge that gap and give that experience, so that the audio would match the three-dimensional visual better. And eventually, like Baji mentioned, so by 2012, when again Disney Pixar released the animated film Brave, Dolby introduced a complete new revolution in sound, which was Dolby Atmos. And most people today on this session would probably have heard the name Dolby Atmos, if not experienced Dolby Atmos. At least in cinemas, they would have experienced. And this was a complete new concept. So when we moved from stereo to 5.1, we said, we have surround sound. But that surround sound was still not three-dimensional. It was a very two-dimensional experience because it was all on a single plane. So your front channels, your surround, everything was on one singular plane. And while you had like front left to right or front to back movements and placement possible for your audio, but you had nothing that would give you a sense of the height dimension. So that was still missing, and that is what was most interesting to add to the audiovisual experience. And in Atmos, we brought in the height dimension, but that was not the only important difference. The most important difference was the whole approach to audio. Till like 5.1 or 7.1, what we had was a very channel-based sound mixing and sound reproduction approach, which meant that all the sounds that you attempted to distribute, to kind of create that interesting sound mix, would be tied down to those 6 or 8 channels of sound only, and which was to a creative engineer or a sound designer, it would be very limiting because you're not able to explore this full three-dimensional space around you, and you're limited to just one single plane in the middle. Just think of this whole sphere or hemisphere, and you're only on one plane of it. So with Atmos, the new concept was what we call today as object-based audio. And while I don't want to get into technical explanation of it, but the way I love to explain this is how we perceive sound in real life. In real life, as you would realize, we listen to various sounds, coming from every possible direction, either in front of us, or to our side, from our sides, or from the back, or even from overhead. And every single sound that we perceive actually originates from a singular point in the space around us. It is always like a singular point source that the sound originates from. And that is the concept, what we say is object audio. So we kind of objectify each source of sound that we want to hear, and we take it as an object and place it in this three-dimensional space around us. And that is how, when you eventually listen to the final sound mix in Dolby Atmos, you feel it's something totally different, and you are as a listener in the middle of that entire sound field where all that action is happening. So you're totally enveloped and immersed in that experience, and that feels more lifelike, more realistic, and you can sense the depth of sound, the direction of sound much better. And if there is movement, that movement sounds so much more accurate and precise. So that is what Dolby Atmos is. I don't want to use any technical terms to kind of explain that. And this was again, like most other Dolby technologies, something that originated in the cinema, but today has moved not only into our homes and living rooms for AV content, but most interestingly, like what started off, as an experiment in the music mixing studio with noise reduction. So we have come back a full circle, and now we have Dolby Atmos technology also for the music that we create today. And that is where I think we have really, made that big leap to kind of eventually move away from the 60, 70 years of, just listening to nothing else but stereo. And while stereo music was great, but you had a lot of limitations. You could never experience music the way you enjoy, for example, live performances. And I think nobody on this session will kind of disagree that when you listen to a live performance, you find it so much more interesting and so much more engrossing. That is because you can feel so much of that music around you, and not just from two speakers in front of you reproducing that music. So that is the whole feeling that a Dolby Atmos music would be able to recreate. Give you that full immersive feel. And it's like some of the musicians and artists have explained that it kind of actually helps to understand the soul of the music better. So yeah, so that's the journey. That's all the development that has happened around audio technologies and surround technologies, and even specifically to music today. So yeah.
On that point, I would like to ask Paji. Paji, you have always maintained whenever I've spoken to you that for the sound guy behind the console, it is very important to get into the psyche of the composer or the singer or whoever's come up with their content to you. And you've been like, chasing technology. You're a proper geek, I will say. I know that. And you've been chasing technology all the time. So has it been difficult to try and get into their mind that this is a better technology, this will give you a better immersive experience? Has it been difficult to explain it to them, or it has been a piece of cake for you?
Nothing is a piece of cake, my friend. Nothing, especially a newer format, technology,
Yeah.
design, fashion. Nothing is a piece of cake. It takes a lot of conviction. That's why you see, if again you go back to history, if you see any new technology, any new innovation, there'll always be resistance because it's trying to break your set comfortable norms of what you are used to, and to kind of
Hmm.
come to terms with, come to understand and accept that this something new might be better will take
Hmm.
time for a lot of people. So you will get the people who have conceived of it, visualized it, and who are the visionary, who have their early band of conversion people who will accept and say, yes, I understand what you're saying. So you have your early band of core people, and then they start spreading out and kind of take it across to everybody else. So in this case, Mr. Ray Dolby's vision passed on to the Dolby staff and people, engineers. Now it is the actual engineers who are actually mixing in Dolby Atmos. I would say we are the first wave of people who have to be converted, because if we are not convinced and we are not mixing it right, how are people going to enjoy it? So,
Right.
in that sense, yes, and it'll take time, boss. You have to accept again, like you said, 80 years of one format is ruling. It's like 80 years of something you've got used to, and then suddenly you are being thrown into something which is totally different in terms of how you're going to absorb that soundscape. Is not going to be an easy thing. We've always learned 2D platform. See, soundstage. What when we mix as engineers, we call it, we have to see the sound stage. When we see a live show, there is a sound stage.
Yeah.
They tell you, imagine how wide your sound stage is going to be left to right. Nobody tells you front, back, or top, bottom. The only sound stage is conceived of as just left to right. It's a 2D
Ah,
platform. So we are mixing
right.
to that so many years,
Ah,
and our experience and our skills have all been towards trying to juice the maximum out of it as much as we can. And suddenly now, like Bhaskar said, I want to hear a particular instrument which is just a little out of that soundstage, but a little up and to the right. Now, again, very rightly said, it's object based. That means, where do I want to put this object? It could be in between speakers. So earlier we were saying left, right speaker, center speaker, behind speaker, or side speaker, and we were all going towards speaker. What about the space in between the speakers, my friend? Who's going to look at that? So we were kind of creating phantom images between, like we do with stereo. The voice, there is no speaker in the center, na, but you hear the voice in the center in stereo. We all do that. Yeah, that's a phantom image which has been created. But now you have physical speaker. You say, "Ha, center speaker hai, so this is good." But now they are saying, "Boss, don't worry about the speaker. Make it invisible. Nikal those go.
ah,
This is your space. How you live life." And where do you hear this bird chirping from? I mean, it could be up, down, left, right, wherever. Don't worry about the speaker. Just put the object there. It'll emit the sound from there, and then you decide how it's going to emit outwards, up, down, left, right, wherever. So that's the kind of power that you have. It's like you are fighting a battle with, like, just pistols, and suddenly you are given the nuclear weapon button. So what the hell are you going to do? So it's like that much power in your hands as a mixing engineer, I would say. But it takes time. I mean, me definitely, it's been a amazing discovery time. I remember doing a film mix about 4 years, 5 years back in Dolby Atmos, one of the last films we mixed at Real Image in Atmos on music. And I was introduced to Atmos at that point, and it was a last minute jump, where we were doing it in 5.1. And the owner came and said, I think the kind of stuff you are doing will sound good in Atmos. So why don't we do Atmos? So it was a overnight decision to do it in Atmos. And I
okay.
was given a crash course in Atmos by Hari, the Dolby guy there, who was very patient, who still is very patient, and he's going a long beard because of his patience. And he held my hand, guided me through, and we finished fixing that film. I learned a lot during that process, and then it was quiet for a while till last year. The Dolby Production Suite, which is a software version of their hardware, which came out, and Dolby were really smart. I think really, really smart at putting that out in the software and putting it in the hands of everybody out there who's got the hardware to kind of, or the power, computing power to mix. And that just opened the floodgates that now you could be with your computer instead of in a studio, and you could experiment. You could actually try things out and see whether they work, they don't work, how do they translate, all that, queries which you have in your head. because now you have a new format, my friend, and
Hmm.
you better learn it well. So yes, it will take time, and I think another interesting thing which is going to develop is that for the first few maybe years, you will see a lot of emulation in Atmos of the earlier stereo thing,
Hmm.
because everybody's trying to capture that and just do a little bit extension, because we are still a little scared to experiment. We don't know. So we are all playing it a little
Yeah.
safe. Once that hurdle hump is over, that's when you'll start seeing really amazing soundscape designing in music coming out, because people were then they have no we've given away the past references. Right now we're just trying to follow that, but once that is gone, everybody's comfortable. That's when the actual interesting things will start to happen, I feel, and that'll take some time, but we're all getting there. Even as creators, mixing engineers, even as listeners, even listeners are now saying, okay, so how close it to the stereo, how close it to the original, everybody's still trying to get that. But once we are over that, that's when it's going to explode, in my opinion.
So you have fired many a pistols all these years. Now I'm waiting for you to press the nuclear bomb, and on that I would ask Bhaskar sir. Sir, as Paji was just saying, we are traditionally very India. I'm talking about the India market. Okay, traditionally we are very averse to experimentation, especially when it comes to the musicians. Okay, so and from you,
Hmm.
when Dolby entered the music space, music production space, recording space, was it you had to did you have to hard sell the product out, or were people receptive, more receptive than you would have thought, or lesser?
I would think we were not we are quite lucky actually, and although there is always a bit of hard work when you're introducing some new technology, like Paji correctly said, there's people have a mindset, legacy mindset that they're comfortable with, and there's always some resistance to accepting something new. But we were lucky because we had people like Paji as one of the early adopters. So, and similarly, a few others who, having already worked with music and Atmos for films,
Film, yeah.
were more curious. We're more curious to now actually experiment with that format better, because see, the thing is, when you're not tying down your audio to your picture, there's so much more that you can do with it, because this is only a pure music, only song, and there's nothing else that can dictate like why should that mix sound in a certain way, and why should certain things be panned or placed in a certain way. So, and that is where I think we are lucky that we had a few very courageous people who wanted to experiment with the Atmos music and have actually done some interesting work already, and not just in India but abroad as well. And
Yeah.
that has kind of helped push the format very quickly, to a level where now people actually enjoy listening, not just listening to music in Atmos, but also creating music in Atmos. And there are specific people who actually, having understood what the possibilities are with the format, are going back and rethinking how to even like conceive and arrange the music. I think Paji would agree to that, and he might have something more to add to it. But yeah, that is where we are today, and it was interesting. I was just having a chat day before yesterday with a very famous music composer in India, and he said that his son, he is also pretty, kicked about the Atmos music experience. But he said his son, who's so much younger, today has switched completely from stereo to Atmos music, and that was like a revelation. I said like he doesn't listen to anything but Atmos music, and this is
Yeah.
something which happened just day before yesterday. Okay, and I'm not like just trying to do a hard sell. So I was also equally like amazed. I said, wow, that's like something great to know. And yeah, so it's something which I think people, once they hear it, will realize what it actually means as a experience. Till you hear it, it'll be kind of okay, just the imagination that, oh, immersive means this, immersive means that. And luckily, so we have, a few services already, which have Atmos music available in India. So Hangama has some Atmos music that people can experience, and then Apple Music launched very recently, so people can experience that. Uh, Title is also available, but you have to have an account registered, in US
Yes.
or somewhere outside India to be able to access that. But yeah, so there is all that experience that is available, and once you listen to it, I think it's a
Okay.
complete revelation to the
On that note, sir, again I'll ask you, Bhaskar sir, like how
yeah.
easier has it been, technically for sound recorders or engineers in the studio now using Dolby Atmos? Is it easier than before? The what technologies were used before? Because it wasn't like that. It's broken and it needed to be fixed. It's just an upgrade.
Right. So the great question. I think it's a very
It
relevant
does it
question also because
does it become a very easier way to work for them, or from your point of view? Then I'll come to Paji's point of view because he's the end user of the product. You are the one is part of the creative team.
sure. So I think, yeah, it's a great question. A lot of people have this thought in their mind that, if I have to mix music in Atmos, it's
Hmm.
probably going to be an extremely difficult task. And this is something which is like a myth that needs to be busted, because when we developed the technology, the whole idea was to kind of develop the technology around all the existing tools which people are familiar with, when they're mixing music, for example. So the thing is, there are obviously some new ways to work with those tools, some and a few additional tools that needs to be, incorporated along with your, existing tools. But that does not mean that it's something very daunting. It's actually, very intuitive and very simple. Just that, concept-wise, people have to understand that it's a slightly different approach that they need to have, and once they have that, in their mind, then they will find it, as easy as what they were doing with the stereo. So yeah, that's how I would put it. It's just not too complicated or too difficult when you have to start mixing an Atmos.
Paji, do you resonate with what he said just now? Do you agree?
Just for creating an earthquake, I should say no, but I think I will just be not create a tsunami and say yes. So uh, okay, I can just tell you from my experience. As I mean, I am coming purely from that point of view, that what I've experienced, I can just share that, which is that if I, who's a stereo mix engineer and a film 5.1 limited
Yeah.
mix engineer, who can deliver a film mix of music called One by TM Krishna, which I mixed in just a matter of days of learning this process. And I could deliver that commercially released film, and it's available on Blu-ray. And once, if hopefully the video formats become Dolby compliant, Atmos compliant, we can actually watch it on other platforms. So that's my benchmark. I could very easily switch my thinking more than anything else. Like Bhaskar said very rightly, I think Dolby guys were smart about it. They used existing platforms of the digital audio workstations that people were familiar with. They didn't give you a new platform saying, "Ye naya hai, isko seekho." They said, "You're already working with XYZ. Within that, you just have to add this, just like learning another plugin. Just add this, and these are the ways you have to go about doing it." And once they are set, you can save them as a preset and just call them up every time as well. So it's like when stereo first came out, even then from mono, people had to learn. When you first start making roads, you have to tell people, boss, drive on the left side or the right side. So there's a law you have to learn. There's a
Which you
certain
don't, which you don't still, sir.
process.
Yeah,
No, no,
but we don't drive on the right
we
and
don't.
left side.
We are a free country.
Yeah.
So, but you have to learn those certain basics. So it's the
Huh.
same thing as that. You buy a plugin, you buy any new gadget, you have to take the process to learn what the thing does. And this is the same thing, nothing very different. but it's very intuitive, like you said. And in my opinion, I think it's easier because earlier we had to do a 5.1 mix and maybe deliver to client, and sometime maybe say, okay, I'll give you a stereo separate or a mono separate, whatever. Now here it's very interesting. You do an Atmos mix, and from there you can get all the down mixes deliverables just from that one Atmos metadata, whether it's going to be 7.1, 5.1, stereo, mono, whatever you want. It just derives all that information from that one big mother chunk file of the Dolby
Hmm.
Atmos. Done. I don't have to spend time doing all the others. So that thing, and it translates that very beautifully, keeping all the energy intact and where everything should go. So somebody smart has obviously put thought behind it at how it has to deliver all that, and that's the beauty of that system. And I really like that part of it, and the transition that we all have to do. We all have to do it. That's okay, but it's intuitive. It's easy. It's not something a rocket science that one has to go back to the basics and learn. And I think that's where they spent their time, effort, and everything, and it's paying off in that sense. Yes.
And sir, with your own label, Paji, you've
Yeah.
been Asli Music. You've been like doing all sorts of music, independent. You've done Punjab folk. You done South India. You done Bollywood. You done pop. I mean, you mix everything. Okay. Which is the one genre of music that you think is the most suitable for to be mixed in Atmos, or is the same playing field for all the genres otherwise?
Actually, to start off with, I think just to grab everybody's attention, I still think the spiritual space was the first one which came to my mind, and that's the first one I did because I had that
Okay.
Guru Granth Sahib Ekunkar as part of my catalog, which I
Yeah.
launched my label with.
Yeah.
So I was very keen, and the again, I think I'm just switching back and forth quickly because things are coming to my head. What Bhaskar mentioned that how we are going to record for Atmos is going to start happening, and surprisingly, 9 years ago, we recorded it with that Soundfield microphone, that particular album, The Voice, which has the XYZ, which was in
Hmm.
Yashraj. So that had the height information already encoded, and we were only using the stereo part when we launched it. So when I got those tracks out to mix in Atmos, and I was surprised, oh, I'd forgotten that it actually had an XYZ. And I remember
Hmm.
maybe calling Bhaskar or Hari and to check, hey, I have this encoded material. Now, how do we use it in Atmos? I had no idea, but I thought we have something here. So we used that as part of our Atmos mix, and I found that the effect of it was very engaging because in meditational spiritual sphere, you want to be lost in something around you, and this kind of format really lends itself very well to kind of immerse you into a totally hypnotic kind of trance. You can just have things coming from all around you, and it feels like you are in the center of this entire universe, and you can close your eyes and just be lost. So personally, I think that format really works well. And to flip it 180-degree, I just mixed a song by Prabdeep, the hip hop artist, a hip hop song in Atmos,
Okay.
and that itself was very interesting. It was something totally different, but that itself gave me a lot of opportunity to think, okay, how do I place instruments? How do we look at things? What is the hip hop artist doing it? So again, like I said in the beginning, our references are all stereo. So I'm listening to the stereo mix constantly to kind of check back how am I doing. But I think in a while that will go, and you will just be given sessions and saying, do what you want. There is no stereo reference, buddy. Do what you want.
Okay.
That's when things will get interesting. Abhi, we are still referencing back. And so we are worried, because somebody hears the stereo and jumps to Atmos, they should not feel that, the punch is gone. And Srijesh and and Srijesh has given a lot of information about this, how to keep that intact so that you don't feel lost. And, the tips and tricks how to do that. So all that is happening. But I think once that is done, birds will be ready to fly.
So how soon will that be? When will the birds fly, Mr. Bhaskar Pal?
That's $1 million question. I think we have everything on the plate for people to already grab. It's a matter of mindset change. So, but I think it's already happening. It's the interesting part is it's already happening, and we don't have to wait.
Hmm.
People are already experimenting, and of late there's been a lot of new interest in mixing music and that. So I'm sure people are already excited and are already warming up to the idea of creating immersive music.
So, Paji, are
So
artists
yeah.
also just that as keen as you guys? Like, are the artists also keen on Atmos now? Are they starting to realize how better their music will sound? Or
Okay, it's a mixed bag, I would say. Frankly, right now, like again, it's early days. It's a mixed bag. Some of the again artists who have come from the analog era and who have come from stereo very strongly intention in mind,
yeah,
uh, they want to hear it. They'll say, okay, you have my song. Can you do it in Atmos and show me what it sounds like? I mean, so they want to actually compare and hear it. What is the difference that everybody's talking about? So yes, that will happen. And like I said, it's early days, and so people want to hear the difference before they are convinced. Some of the newer artists, like I said with Prabdeep, he was absolutely excited. I mean, he just jumped right in and said, "Please do this song, Papi." And once it's out there, I want to do the whole album again. And in fact, his next album, which he's writing right now, he wants to start thinking about how to record it in, like so that it's Atmos friendly. So he's
okay,
actually excited about doing that process, which I again wanted to mention that long time back I met Mr. Jeff who works at Air Lindust in UK, and he was recording everything with a Decca tree, even if it was a flute solo line. He was recording everything in 5.1 already. The recording format was 5.1, and I was just thinking back the other day that I need to speak to him, because he was already ahead of the curve thinking ahead, and now if he has to mix all those in Atmos, it'll be so much fun to actually have all that extra detailed information of each instrument already in a surround format, which just has to be kind of placed where it needs to be, and that's going to start happening. So recording formats actual from the source is not going to be any longer a one mic kind of pinpointed source. That's going to start changing. At least a stereo, if not a Decca Tree 5.1 or a holographic recording. All those things will start coming into play right now, I think. ORTF, stereo, binaural, Blumen, everything will start coming into importance right now, which earlier was actually a very, very, very niche kind of thing in the music space. And that's something else which Bhaskar mentioned. I really want to point out. Dolby Atmos music and Dolby Atmos for cinema are like different things, because here you're not following a story or a narrative or
yeah.
dialogue moving. You are totally free to kind of mix in the kind of headspace that you actually want, and which is scary and liberating at the same time.
So the play is about to start, but Bhaskar sir, how cost effective will be the toys? Are they going to be like really cost effective for everybody in this country?
Okay.
Especially the
Yes,
regional segment
great
of the
question. In
country,
fact, great question again. I think, in fact, I was just thinking about it when you talked about, how easy it would be to be creating music in Atmos.
Hmm.
So, there's one more thing that I wanted to mention at that point was also about how easy is it to get started mixing music in Atmos. So, in fact, the kind of tools that we have is like you don't have to go into a big fancy studio with all those multiple speakers and a heavy duty workstation that will allow you to then mix Atmos. Yes, while that is like the recommended setup for the complex mixes to be achieved on, or for that ultimate experience in a studio environment, but as somebody who wants to just get started to even experiment with Atmos music mixing, they can do so with as little as or as simple as just a MacBook, I mean a laptop, a pair of headphones, and the Dolby Atmos production suite software, along with their chosen DAW. So there are multiple DAWs that already support Atmos music creation. So starting from Pro Tools, Nuendo, and then your music focused DAWs, which are Logic X, Ableton Live. So they all support Atmos content creation. And if you're working on any of these, you can start off right away. And if you go to our website, so there are a couple of handouts there which you can share, and that will tell you, that we have some free freebies to offer. So we have the Dolby Atmos production suite, a 90-day trial license. You can download the software for free. The Atmos Music Planner, which is the most essential tool to allow you to do all your 3D placements and movements for your music, with a lot of automated sequencing and stuff like that, which is really cool. I think that entire tool is like completely free for anybody to download. And right now you have a 90-day free trial license. So yes, so as long as you have a compatible DAW, MacBook, and a pair of headphones, you can just download those software and get started right away.
And Hardik, they also have some incredible videos, Dolby site. I mean, I've been following a lot of them since last year, since they came out.
Yeah.
Some really,
Yeah.
really insightful,
I
helpful
did check them.
videos.
I have seen them out.
There,
Yeah.
there are a whole bunch of them out there which you can just go and watch. And believe me, you don't need to open the manual. So I would say, because I'm a huge believer in reading the manual at least once, because I come from that school. But believe me, this one I didn't have to. All the videos, the instructions were the videos were so good to help you along. And I think anybody who's interested should just go to their website and just go through their videos and do what you are doing, and you'll be fine. They're that good.
So Bhaskar sir,
Correct. So
there is
there's another handout that is there with all those links, important links, which show you what are the video tutorials that are available, and even some of the masters talking about their
Yeah.
experience with Atmos music creation. So all of those links are there in those handouts. So yeah, please feel free to use those links, and you will be able to access a wealth of information.
Bhaskar
Yeah,
sir,
over to you, Hardik.
this common person that we know is a very good, he's a very big name in the sound industry. He just told me some time back, maybe you heard it too, that he was listening to some music on his headphones and he was transported to the atmosphere. So, and he's very keen to know whether the next upgrade on this will take him to the ionosphere or the
Sorry,
stratosphere.
stratosphere. Where are we going, Bhaskar? We all need to.
Where are we going?
I think we will go inwards into people's hearts.
Okay.
D for Dil and D for Dolby. Aha, kya baat hai.
It was lovely talking to both of you people. And like, just one final parting thoughts from you, Pages sir.
Technology, boss, don't fight it. You can't fight it. You can't win this battle. Just make friends with it, learn it, learn to live with it. You'll be fine. If you keep fighting it all the time, you'll just be left behind. So it's going to go on from leaps and bounds. I was just talking to somebody yesterday saying today 100 Mbps or a 200 line is so taken for granted that even if I have like a 2 second wait wheel, I get impatient, because and earlier there was a dial-up modem where I had to wait for the trrr to happen. We've come from that to this today. So we have to be patient with it. We have to spend time to understand it, learn it, adapt it to the way we want to work with it. It's a tool. It's available. Now, how you want to take advantage of it, how you want to learn it, it's a car. You want to drive it at 100, you want to drive it at 10, you want to drive automatic, you want to drive manual. It's up to you. You want to drive with the windows down or windows up, you decide. But it's
Hmm.
there, it's available for you. And I think that's the exciting part for me, to kind of see the evolutions which are happening in technology and the music process. Yes, there will be hurdles. Yes, there will be things which sometimes don't work out, and there are things which really work out. And because of that, it's like the building a pyramid. Things kind of make not
Yeah.
work, and then you kind of arrive at a final solution. And that's how it is happening. And work with it. Be patient with it. It's going to be it's very interesting times ahead. And I think we are very lucky that we've seen this entire ग्राफ एंड नाउ विद
So,
डॉल्बी एटमॉस.
yeah.
जो स्टार वॉर्स में हम देखते थे चीजें ना, अभी लोग ऑलरेडी रॉकेट में जा रहे हैं प्राइवेटली. तो हे बॉस, इट्स हैपनिंग इन आवर लाइफ टाइम.
Yeah. Bhaskar sir, what if someone really wants to fight Dolby Atmos? Like I want to fight this technology. I'm not adapting to it. How are you going to like make broker a peace out there?
No, so I strongly believe that everybody has their own individual choices, but the proof is in the eating. The proof of the pudding is in the eating. So
Yeah.
once people experience it themselves, only then will they realize what is the worth, and I would say that, don't go by what others are, talking about.
Right.
Try it out yourself. Try it out yourself, because your creativity may be at a different level from somebody else's, and you might want to express yourself much more than, that other person. You might be more progressive than the other person. So, just try it out. Try it out, check it out yourself, and then, you know, take your, decisions, or, kind of come to a conclusion. Don't go by what people are saying, other people are saying, if you hear things like, okay, Atmos is extremely difficult, Atmos is not for every genre of music or whatever, those are all myths again. So you must explore it yourself and figure it out.
Uh, this was a lovely session, and it's always a pleasure talking to Paji. That is beyond doubt. Anyone on the session who knows Paji knows how good it is to talk to him. And Bhaskar, sir, really insightful thoughts. And I mean, it should clear out whatever remaining doubts the people on the session have about Dolby Atmos. Maybe we'll have more adapters of the technology very soon. So that's it for today. We'll see you again on the 8th of next month and every month. Bye bye. Take care. See you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Bye.
Rudy.